So at E3 2019, I got to spend about 30 minutes playing Link's Awakening, the E3 2019 demo, which was basically the beginning of the game through the first dungeon. It has the opening cutscene and all of that jazz. And obviously, we know what this game is, right? It's Link's Awakening. It's technically been redone before as Link's Awakening DX, added the color dungeon, all that stuff. And Link's Awakening happens to be my very first ever Zelda game, so I do have a bias towards this game. But it also means that it probably would come under heavy scrutiny from me since, well, after all, it is near and dear to my heart because it is what made me fall in love with the Legend of Zelda series. So let's just get this part out of the way now. There is one highly subjective aspect of the entire Link's Awakening experience on Switch, and that is the art style. You're either going to love this art style or you're going to hate it. I don't think there's going to be a lot of in between with it. Yes, it's very toy-like, it's very plastic-looking, it's very much something that you might see in a dream, which is interesting given that, well, I'm not even going to spoiler warning this because, let's just be honest, this game's been out for 25 plus years. The whole game is a dream. The art style, unfortunately, for something like that, might bother people who don't know that, who this is a brand new game for, because, well, I mean, it already feeling like a dream before you know it's a dream kind of sort of ruins the surprise a little bit. But personally, as someone who already knows everything that happens in this game, knows the entire story, all the dungeons, all that jazz, it doesn't really bother me. In fact, I think it's kind of nice. I think it's cute. And this isn't the first time I've called a Zelda art style cute before, but I actually enjoyed it. Now, that's me personally, and I realize it's a very subjective opinion. Yes, I went hands-on with it. That doesn't necessarily make you like the art style anymore. So if you look at it and you hate the way this game looks, you're going to still hate the way this game looks even when you play it. So what can we talk about then that isn't as subjective, right? Obviously, when we're talking about opinions, it's almost always subjective. But there are some things we can touch on a bit. One of them being that there is this kind of bokeh blur effect, or whatever it's called, where the outer edges of the game are blurred. It's not something I personally noticed while I was playing the game, but in reviewing my footage of the game, you can actually tell that it is blurred outside of the main focus area of the game, which is generally the middle of the screen. This isn't the only game on Switch to do it. Heck, this isn't the only game on any platform to do this. There are many games that use this effect, whether it's indie or AAA, and a lot of it goes unnoticed by people because, again, our focus is on what's happening in the middle of the screen because that's where our character is, that's where our actions are being taken. But once you realize it's there, it is something that it's hard to not see while you're playing once you realize it's there. I don't know, we couldn't really turn it off in the settings, so I don't know if it's something that is going to be able to be turned off, but it is there, and again, that is something that might bother some people. It bothered me a little bit once I noticed it, but then as I kept playing, I slowly forgot about it, so I don't think it's going to affect my overall opinion of the game, but it is definitely something present. Beyond that, the game controls great. It still kind of works in the old school grid-like nature of the original Link's Awakening, which is going to make the game feel, gameplay-wise, very familiar to people who have played Link's Awakening in the past, either version. And I don't know that that's... some people might view that as a negative, saying that, they didn't Final Fantasy VII this and add modern advancements into the gameplay. But I also view it as, hey, look, this is more of a remastering than an inherent remake. Because a remake to me would be rebuilding everything from the foundation up, and you end up with a result that's very similar to the original, but not quite the same. Well, this game is pretty close to being the exact same as it was back in the 80s. Now, setting that aside, because again, you're either going to love that it's faithful to the original, or you're going to hate that it doesn't have modern advancements in movement. everything else felt great. The game is kind of easier a little bit because item management's easier. There's just more buttons on controllers today than there were back then. So you can map X and Y to any items you want, which is not, unexpected for a Zelda game. But back in the day, it was just A and B. So you couldn't always have your shield and your sword equipped. Now you always have those equipped plus the other things. It just makes things easier. Obviously, there wasn't an R button to bring the shield up and use it to like push the spikes in the beach or to like deflect objects or whatever. So that's obviously all new to this game. And again, it does make things slightly easier just because it's easier to manage. The kind of easiness that adds to the game is actually a welcome change because it's just making things less tedious, right? And because it's less tedious, it ends up just being naturally easier. That being said, there is something I'm glad they didn't change, and that is the game does not hold your hand at all. Sure, Kapora Gabora pops up and gives you the same old messages you got back in the original Link's Awakening, but beyond that, like, it's not telling you can go anywhere, do anything right away in the game, just like you could in the original Link's Awakening. And I like that. I like that the game doesn't inherently tell you anything. You run into the bunny up in the mysterious woods, or I'm sorry, the raccoon. And so I was getting mixed up with A Link to the Past for a moment. You run into the raccoon, right? And you got to get the key to the dungeon. And the raccoon tells you, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He always tricks you, but then, you got to find a way to get powder around him. The game doesn't tell you how to make that powder. It doesn't tell you what to do. It doesn't tell you to get the mushroom and take it to the witch's hut. It doesn't tell you how to do any of it. It doesn't really tell you how to get through the dungeon that you're able to play or how to beat the boss. It doesn't tell you anything. And it's so refreshing in today's world where a lot of games do tell you things. In many ways, Link's Awakening feels right at home because Breath of the Wild's the same way. There's, some beacons on the map, but beyond that, they don't really tell you what to do or how to do it. And I like that about Breath of the Wild, and I love that about Link's Awakening, because that's the way it was when I was a kid, and that's the way it still is today. And I think that might be why they chose Link's Awakening in this particular case for a remake, because it is pretty open in terms of being able to go anywhere and experiment with things in this world, and two, it also doesn't hold your hand. And so it kind of goes hand in hand as a natural experience to play after Breath of the Wild. So, again, I think this is really interesting, really good. I honestly, everything about it just felt fantastic. There wasn't a lot of things I noted mentally anyways, and even in reviewing the footage, that are really different from the original. It's a pretty true blue remake. Obviously, we know about some changes that are in the game we couldn't experiment with, like the Zelda Maker thing. Like, that's all really cool, but I can't really comment on that until I try it, right? All I have is what you guys have seen, and I didn't go hands-on with that, so that wouldn't be a hands-on impression. So, honestly, Link's Awakening just felt exactly the way Link's Awakening should feel. Is it worth, $59.99? That's obviously in the eye of the beholder. It is a full-on remastering, quote-unquote remastering of the game, bringing it into HD, all brand new visuals. Same basic control style, essentially, although you play with the control stick versus a D-pad. But yeah, I honestly, I have very little to complain about this game. I also haven't revisited this game in a while, so it was interesting. As you can probably see through the footage, I failed to get to the dungeon a couple times just because I forgot how to do it. I haven't played Link's Awakening in like 20 years, so it's been a long time. And I just totally forgot about taking. I knew you had to get the mushroom, and I'm like, where do I turn this mushroom in the dust again? It just totally spaced out. It was the witch's hut, and it's fascinating, even in a game that I have, have such fond memories of and have spent so much time with, that I'm still getting stumped going back through it again. And I love that about these kind of more open experiences from the Zelda universe. So I'm probably going to pick it up. Does that mean it's worth the price? I don't know. It's worth the price for me. That's all I can tell you guys. As someone who's a big Link's Awakening fan, I am thrilled to see this happen. This is my Final Fantasy VII, right? Like, a lot of people are super stoked for that Final Fantasy VII remake, and I get why. But, like, this is basically my Final Fantasy VII remake, right? Zelda's my favorite franchise. This was the first game I ever played in the Zelda series, and it's now been remade in HD, and I am very happy about that, or remastered in HD, whatever. I'm stoked what they have done with this. And how faithful it is, yet still feels good in 2019. Now, I did know some people asked me some questions about it, like frame rate. Apparently, the frame rate on the Treehouse one maybe looked like it dipped into the teens or worse. I can't comment on that because I didn't watch any of the Treehouse footage for Link's Awakening. But what I can say is, in playing it, I didn't notice any frame rate problems. I was trying to tell if it was running in 30 or 60 FPS. I could not tell. Maybe Nintendo's already publicized what it's running in. I'll have to check my notes, but I honestly thought it felt perfectly fine, and I have no issues with it. It ran, from what I could tell, in a native 1080p. So I won't be surprised if it's 30 FPS, which, by the way, most Zelda games are 30 FPS. The original Link's Awakening was 30 FPS. So, maybe that's why I just didn't notice, because, hey, look, this is just what I'm used to this game feeling. This is what I remember. I remember the game feeling this way. There were some different things with the enemies, I suppose. There were some new moves from some of the enemies. Just kind of something to remember as you're playing this game, that it's not 100% Link's Awakening from the past, but it's very, very close. It's a very faithful remastering of that, while adding a few new elements in that make it more modern. So overall, I'm pretty thrilled with how this is turning out. Obviously, I don't know how the rest of the game ends up working and looking, or the new dungeon maker, but I'll be buying it day one because I'm a Zelda guy, and it's my first ever Zelda game, and it's been long enough for me that I kind of want to go back and relive some of those memories while making new ones with a now quote-unquote better-looking version of the game. Again, totally subjective on that front. Anyways, you guys let me know what you think about Link's Awakening from what you have seen. Maybe you were at E3 and you got a chance to play it. Let me know your thoughts on it. Be sure to drop a like on this video if you happen to like it. Share it with your friends. Subscribe for more content. And man, oh man, there's so much more E3 stuff to come. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next video.